So we're moving into Thanksgiving, and we're closing our last week on gratitude. Grateful, but I want to look at the grateful part this week, the gratitude part. So many good moments as I feel your spirit on me. This talk is going to go into an interesting turn, as you'll see, but I want to start with this idea of what are you grateful for as we go into this Thanksgiving. You know, I see Scott and Jose here, and very often when we have dinner with them, we always start, or somewhere along the line, Jose asks us all to say what we're grateful for. And it causes great conversations. But I don't know that we have them that often in our lives. What are we grateful for? What am I really grateful for? And she puts in her song, the hawk that circles overhead. Well, as it turns out, this morning, as I was walking the dogs on the LA River, which is quite an expensive word for what this is, there was a hawk, a beautiful hawk that just kept circling us. I kept thinking, hungry? But it just kept circling us, and then it just flew out, and the morning was so gorgeous this morning. It was just sun baking everywhere, and it was just spectacular, and I had, understood what I was going to talk about today. I was like, well, boy, you put it in your mind, and it just shows up. The rainbow bending wide, climbing into my bed at night. How many of you feel that, like at night when you just climb into your bed and get under those covers? Gratitude that you have a bed, that you have a home to go to, that you have a place that is yours, that you can lay down in. The title of my talk today is In My Amazement. And when I saw this, I always get a bunch of slides to choose from. And when I saw this slide, it reminded me of being on the Isle of Capri in Italy. How many of you have ever been to the Isle of Capri? Have you been to the Blue Grotto? So the Blue Grotto is this gorgeous, natural blue. It's like the inside would look something like this. But that little black hole there, you can't get into the Blue Grotto by just going into the Blue Grotto. You have to be in a boat that you can lay down in so that the water keeps doing this. And it just keeps going up and down and showing you the entrance to the Blue Grotto. But you have to go at that one moment when it shows you the entrance, then you slide in, laying down in the boat so you don't hit your head. I marvel at myself that back then that didn't bother me, the thought of being underwater perhaps, but it didn't. And we got into that Blue Grotto, and for those of you that have been there, you just can't believe you're in this place that's natural, that it's just this divine space that is just magnificent. And it is amazing. It is amazing. So Margaret's song really takes me somewhere. It takes me somewhere good. When you hear that thought, I'm grateful for the sun that bathes upon me, or whatever the lyric is. I hear that, but I hear it in connection to the music that she wrote to it. And when the music and lyrics of something come together so brilliantly, so perfectly, so organically, it takes you somewhere, doesn't it? You all know those types of songs that just suddenly move you to another state of consciousness. Somewhere good. Well, Ernest Holmes said this: we should be careful not to divide our mental house against itself. Now just think about that for a second. We should be careful not to divide our mental house against itself. So there I am, listening to Margaret's song and being taken to this magnificent place. My mind is focused right there. I'm in this emotional state. I'm in this consciousness of love and wholeness and completeness and gratitude, a real sense of gratitude. And then my mind goes somewhere else. Today really marks the last Sunday that Nora was in church with me. This was the day where last year this day would have been the day of her accident, although it will be tomorrow. And it has been weighing heavily upon me this whole last year. It almost feels like this whole last year just rushed through for me. And all of a sudden, I've stopped. And I've gone, oh, this is what happened last year. And when I came to church last year on this day, I got out of my car and Nora was laying in the parking lot in a hoodie laughing, but laying in the middle of the parking lot with all of her teenage friends around her. And I got out of the car and I went, what are you doing? You are laying in the middle of the parking lot. Someone's going to run over you. I said, now get up. I said, besides that, people are going to start showing up. You look embarrassing. And she refused to listen to me. She just kept laughing. And she said, Dad, you should just get down here with me. Come on. Feel what it feels like. And I was like, I have to go sing. And I did. And then she had to join me in rehearsal momentarily, and we had a magnificent Sunday service. But I think about that moment. I think about seeing her laying just audaciously in the parking lot. So I think about that whole day, obviously. But a very wise person said to me last night that I have the opportunity to choose what I'm going to think about during these next few days. And I could certainly go and choose to think about the horrible things that would happen later on tonight. Or I could choose to think about something else. And then I find this quote from Ernest Holmes. We should be careful not to divide our mental house against itself. I can listen to Margaret's song, and it takes me to such an amazing place. And then I can take that focused mind and place it over here, and take that, put it aside, and suddenly be in this state of mind. My choice. I get to decide which one I lay in, which one I allow to affect my mind. So how do I keep my mind where Margaret takes me in her song? How do I keep my mind focused on something? We tend to think that memories and thoughts pull at us and ask for our attention. That's not the case. It just isn't. You allow your mind to go to wherever you are putting your attention. So how do I keep my mind where Margaret takes me? When you pay attention or focus on something, the prefrontal cortex springs into action. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to do my best to explain this to you. So the prefrontal cortex of your brain stretches across your brain, across your skull. When you think of something like Margaret's song, and it brings you into an emotional state, that prefrontal cortex operates on all cylinders. It just brings everything you're bringing to it. When you are focused, your brain operates at the most amazing pace, and you are capable of staying in that state, and it just expands you. So what happens when you give your attention to two things simultaneously? How many of you multitask? You all multitask, come on, face it. How many of you drive and talk on the phone at the same time? Yeah, you're multitasking. Hopefully you have a car phone. So multitasking requires, and believe it or not, there is an institute in Paris, France, that did MRIs while someone was asked to multitask, a whole group of people. And what they found is that when you multitask, your prefrontal cortex splits in two. Half of it takes one task, half of it takes the other task. That's what's happening in your brain when you multitask. Almost impossible to do it equally. One side will take more, depending on which side you have somehow decided is more important to think about. So here's your brain, and it's now multitasking. It's doing two things at one time. I'm thinking of all the good that I am, and then I go and think about something that makes me very sad. Which one wins? Just depends on which one I'm going to give it to. But guess what I've just done? I have just cut the power of my mind in half. I have allowed my mind to split itself in two, therefore disseminating all of the energy and power to one of the two sides. That's what's happening when you're multitasking. Now let's move forward and ask ourselves, what happens when you add a third thing? How many of you have multitasked more than three things at once? All of us have done it, where we've tried to do it. We're watching TV, baking cookies, talking on the phone, and dyeing our hair all at the same time. We do it. We absolutely do it. So what happens then? Well, guess what? The brain does not suddenly turn into four parts. Not capable of that. The brain sticks with two parts. You're only ever going to be talking about focusing on two at the same time, which means, let's just say you're thinking about three things, working on three things. One of them is forgotten for a second or a moment till you bring it back up. Now, I know there are a lot of seniors in the room today, myself being one. Wow, even saying that seems a little odd, but I am a senior. So what do you think a senior moment is? How many of you have had senior moments? Come on. Eric, you've never had a senior moment? They're coming. Okay. You know what a senior moment is? Okay, then I'm not telling you. A senior moment is when you forget that third thing. That's all it is. Because you're somehow multitasking. I do this all the time. I am thinking of 20 things I'm trying, right? Margaret knows. I'm trying to get, and then Margaret calls me and I'm on the phone with her and it's like, what? What did I do? What was I just doing? Because I've forgotten it. Not because I'm stupid, not because I'm old. It's not even a senior moment. It's the fact that I have split my brain in two, added 20 other things, and I can't remember which of those 20 things I'm actually thinking about. That's what's going on with our brains. So why am I bringing this up today? Why am I talking about this today? Well, because I've come up with this brand new concept called emotional multitasking. Multitasking emotionally. How many times have you been happy and then sad instantly? Or been happy and then thought of something sad? You've just cut your brain in half. And now you've given less power to either side of your emotional brain. So, when we talk about gratitude, what if we actually spent our lives in gratitude? What if we really were, the title of my talk is In My Amazement. What if we were willing to be more amazed and less frustrated? How many of you are frustrated with anything in your life right now? What if would you be willing to give that up? Yeah? Do you think it has to be resolved before you give it up? No. Josh says yes. The answer is no. You don't. You don't have to resolve it to give up the frustration. What you need to do is move from frustration, and actually, possibly your frustration now just covered the entire frontal cortex, if that's all you're focused on. And do you know how powerful it is when your frontal cortex focuses on something? When it actually focuses 100% on something? What do you think spiritual mind treatment is? Ernest Holmes came up with this idea, I guess, of affirmative prayer, if not someone else. But we use it in this center. We use it in our philosophy. Spiritual mind treatment is focusing my mind on nothing but the truth. Speaking the truth. Speaking it, allowing it to flow through me. Right, Corrine? Not getting out of the way and just letting the truth flow through me as I'm speaking the truth, that God is all there is. It's what I am. It's who I am. I can't be anything else. And if I stay focused on it, I have just taken my frontal cortex, expanded it exponentially, and made it so powerful that what I am focusing on is what I am now living and experiencing. How many times do you think I have spent half hour, 45 minutes with someone, finishing with a treatment, finishing it all up, and the very next sentence is, so what do you think about, right back to the problem. What's happening? I've done it, and I've cut it off. Now I've got this part over here, and I still feel a little bit of this, but my focus is here. Does that all make sense? Yeah. It makes sense in a much more practical way to me. When I really understand, because when we talk about mind and consciousness and all that, it all seems so airy-fairy and out here, and like, yes, the consciousness of life, my consciousness. You know what? I can understand my brain. I know what my brain does. And I also know that there's something behind my brain that is operating my brain. That's consciousness. That is the truth of who I am. That's what operates this brain. But when I'm using a brain, which, by the way, I'm using my brain right now. I'm focused on one thing. Getting this message across. And I feel good. I feel vibrant. I feel energized because I know I'm doing one thing here. I have one thing to do when I'm standing up here. That's it. My mind's not going willy-nilly all over the place. You'd notice if it was doing that. So it's staying focused. That consciousness behind the brain is using it, and it's staying focused, and it's staying wide, and it's focused on one thing, us to understand that we have the capacity to stay focused on the amazement of life, on the gratitude of life. That's what it was like yesterday in here. It was interesting. We had Welcome Home yesterday, and it was our most successful day, very full all day. It was wonderful, but there were technical difficulties. And last night when I was home thinking about it, because right in the middle of Eric's class, now nobody really noticed, Eric didn't even notice, because they're laying on the mats with their eyes closed. except for Amy, who left because it was too cold, and it was a little chilly. But they're all laying down there, and the screen went off, and the music went off, and I popped up instantly, changed the music to a different thing, climbed up the ladder to figure out what was going on, and I realized I just went from beautiful Eric Overholtzer vocal God into fix it. And so I still had a little bit of this going on, but I recognized my mind go into, oh, now I'm over here. And it was really kind of disturbing and annoying. And I thought about that. I think most of us live our lives, the bulk of our lives, in a little bit of a disturbed manner. Because most of the time, we are thinking of two things at once emotionally. There are at least two things going on emotionally in our lives. Because we perhaps don't spend the time, I need a little meditation, we don't spend the time to ground ourselves in the truth and then proceed to live our lives from that. Keeping it very focused, very full. Because I think there's a possibility that this frontal cortex has layers, and I can keep it wide, and I can keep it in an understanding of this amazement of life and still do everything else I need to do. One at a time. So this whole article I read was about multitasking, and it was certainly not in favor of multitasking. Because it really basically said, you will have more mistakes if you multitask. And if you multitask, you will never get any one thing done to the ability that you could do it at. What if we actually stopped multitasking? What if we actually, last night I had dinner with Adam, and we had nothing else happening but dinner. We were just sitting at a table talking, having dinner. And I thought, this is amazing. I'm so used to listening to MSNBC, the greatest recipe for indigestion. Doing something else while I'm eating, as if eating's not important enough to just eat. How many of you fall into that prey? Why eating's not, like, let's grab something along the way. Oh, I know what I can do. I can drive, talk on the phone, and eat simultaneously. And so what are we doing? We are dissipating our lives. We are literally dissipating the enrichment of our lives. So what I'm going to close this month out with is this understanding of grateful. Being grateful. And using that as the one task of my mind. The only task of my mind. I'm going to ask you this week, as you go through this week and as you go into your Thanksgiving, I want you to see how many things you can find to be amazed with. In my amazement. I want to see how many things can I find this week to be amazed about. What if that was your focus? What if you only spent your time this week finding, paying attention to, but really finding the things that amaze you? And then let the other side of your mind be free for that amazement. What if we really decided to do that? Now, I'm not saying you can't still do the things you're doing, but find the amazement in it. If you have to go to the bank to do something and it's annoying, look at the bank. The other day I went to the bank and I realized all these gargoyles that were on the sides of the wall. I went, wow, I never noticed that this actually is a beautiful building. I don't usually pay attention to this. So what if we actually took our attention and used our brain to focus on those things that amaze us? What do you think that would do to our lives if we actually were willing to amaze ourselves? Tomorrow is the day that Nora passed for me because her accident, when it happened, I believe she was gone the minute it happened. And certainly the doctors told me that. Yes, there is a day where she left, where her body was done. But I believe that tomorrow marks the day that she left her body, right? So I could choose to be very upset, and certainly there's a part of me that will be emotional. But if I'm going to do what I'm asking you to do, then I am going to only find, thank you, Eric, those things that amaze me. I'm choosing to live the day on my own, to drive up the coast, and just find everything that I can find that will amaze me. And I'm getting a tattoo. So that'll be fun too. I also thought by the time I finish the tattoo, there'll be enough pain that I won't think of anything besides the pain of the tattoo. I'm finally going to get that 5 that Nora and I were going to get together. Will's like so freaked out. He's like, Dad, what if you find a bad one and you can't do it well? He said, please go to Yelp, see if it has good stars. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do this week of Thanksgiving, this final Sunday of being grateful, full of greatness, but also the gratitude of life. You're a choice. If there's anything I've come to understand studying the science of mind and being able to teach and facilitate all of our growth and understanding about this philosophy, it's that the mind is the most amazing tool that the heart has to use. And that it really is time for us to understand what our brains do and then take them and use them properly. And that does mean to understand that if you're willing to really open your mind to the fullness of its capacity, focus on one thing at a time and make sure it's something you want to focus on, your life will transform exponentially. I guarantee you, I know it, I have felt it. It is the only thing that can change your life. It is the only thing that can bring you the life you want to live, the way you use your mind. There is nothing else. It's pure and simple. In my amazement, I really get it, that right where I am, God is. And God is ready to be amazed by everything because God put the amazement there. And I'm just here now to find it with all of you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and spend the week in amazement. Namaste.